You are grieving and your heart is broken, but you are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. I'm Holly Gainsboro. Welcome to Creating Space for Grief and Hope. Hey everyone, welcome to Creating Space for Grief and Hope. This is Holly Gainsboro, founder of Golden Heart Grief Support and Education. This is our third episode on YouTube, but we've been doing a lot of episodes on audio for many, many years. But this YouTube piece is super exciting for me. And today I have another amazing guest. I feel so blessed that I get to bring on, I think I have some of the best guests ever on grief podcasts. I have to be honest, I listen to other grief podcasts and I just love every person I bring on. So I'm very excited about this woman who I brought on today. Her name is Kera Sanchez. I'm pronouncing it right, Kera, because I'm known to butcher names very easily and get called out many times by my guests. So feel free to call me out as needed. So a little bit about Kera, and I found Kera, oh my gosh, it's a few years ago, just around the time Get Griefy Magazine started, and I'll share a little bit about how I met her. Kera had put out something about Reiki and grief, and I responded. And so I started following her and really paying attention to what she's doing. So a little bit about Kera. Kera is a former Spanish high school teacher turned dean of students who's adapting to the transient lifestyle of military life, a mom of two, and the wife of a naval officer. She is a certified grief and resilience expert, trauma-informed secondary educator, and editor-in-chief of Get Griefy Magazine and MILSPO, I don't know if you call it MILSPO, social company magazine. In June of 2022, days after the birth of her youngest child, her mom unexpectedly died at the age of 57. Kera found herself navigating grief and postpartum. In her grief, she created legacy letters, guided journal, as well as a second journal, No Legacy Lost. Kera also started to document her grief journey on Instagram and searched to find other grievers with whom she could relate. She formed strong connections through the magic of social media. Don't we love social media, everybody? Using her skills as an educator, facilitator, creative, and community builder, she decided to found and create Get Griefy Magazine in November of 2023 and published the first issue in February 2024. She now serves as editor-in-chief and is the face behind the brand. I will tell you guys who are watching or listening, if you haven't checked out Get Griefy Magazine, do it. It's great for grief professionals and anyone who's grieving a loss, whatever that loss is. It doesn't have to be a death loss, any kind of loss. And those who are supporting people who are grieving. The information has so much comfort and information, like educational information and support and resources of people you can go to and be guided to. So that's a little bit about Kera. I want to tell you that if you're not following her Instagram, she's hilarious. She does the best posts and videos. I mean, I laugh out loud every single time, and you just got to follow her. So welcome, my new friend. It's wonderful to meet you actually sort of virtually in person.
I know, honestly, oh my gosh, thank you so much for all of that. You just pumped my tires. And likewise, I just respect all of the people that I've met online, and I just feel so called to bring everyone together. It just feels really nice to have this community because, yeah, the grief, it does suck, but the life that we're building as a result of it doesn't have to. And that's the goal, truly.
And what we do with our grief, right? Like I said to you before we actually came on air, and the name of this podcast is Creating Space for Grief and Hope, because my goal as your host, and I know your goal as well, is to help people find that hope, whatever that hope looks like for them, right? Hope means different things to different people. So what you've done is, and taken that pain, I always call it pain to purpose.
Yep.
Rather than sitting and sinking in the abyss of all the pain, you just did something. You were very proactive in your own personal healing, which of course is ongoing, and we never get to a place of healed, past tense, ever.
Yeah.
Right. It's a constant. So share, if you will, a little bit about your story about the birth of your second child, which was very stressful. I've read all about that. And then the death of your mom, just on the heels of your daughter's birth.
Oh man. What's really unique about the situation is that I had also given birth about a year and a half prior to my first daughter. And that was truly a stage of growing pains for my mom and I, because she was adjusting to being a grandma and kind of having to take the second seat sometimes to my husband, and she didn't always agree with all of the decisions that we were making. And it was also during the time of COVID. And I think she just felt really left out is ultimately where our situation had found itself. And I do think that that even in itself was a form of grief. She felt like, you know, her time as a quote unquote mother had come to a close and her daughter was becoming independent. And, now I can recognize that my mom was grieving and she just didn't know how to express herself. So it really did cause a rift in our relationship. And prior to that, we really didn't have any issues. It was just like truly, I equate it to growing pains. Like we were just trying to gain our footing, and she was trying to understand her role and her place as a grandma versus my mom, and all of that unfolded. And when it was time for my youngest daughter to be born, I really wanted that experience to be different. And so we were working really hard at our relationship. And ultimately what had happened is I go into labor a full month early. My husband wasn't allowed into the hospital because he was testing positive for COVID, and they would only let somebody in as a birth companion that was COVID negative. And so my mom happened to be negative. She came in, and it was one of those moments where she was able to show up for me. And we also were able, after the birth of my daughter, we were able to just like have some conversations and chat one on one. And I feel like it really allowed us to sit in what really truly mattered in the moment. And we I felt like we're in a great spot, and one of the last memories I have of her is her walking out of the hospital, and I said, "Mom, I am excited for you. I know you're going on a vacation, you're going on a trip, but when you get back, you're gonna need to babysit because I'm gonna be tired. I have a, 1.5-year-old and a newborn." And the reality is she never came home. She never came home from her trip. The second day of her vacation, she decided to hang back at the hotel. She wasn't feeling well. Everyone went out to sightsee. And when my dad and her friends came back to go get her for, hey, like, let's get dressed, let's go to dinner, she was coughing up blood and saying that she needed an ambulance, and the ambulance didn't get there in time. So, I was in the hospital with my baby. Because of the whole COVID situation, my baby was in isolation for a few days. So I literally had just held my baby for the first time and then subsequently got the phone call from my dad that my mom had unexpectedly died. And none of it made sense in my brain. I was like, wait, what? We just got to a good place. Things were going to get better when she got back. And I ruminated on that for so long. And it was just such a shock to your system. Someone who was literally just there for one of the greatest moments of your life, then quickly, suddenly gone. And I really didn't have words for what I was feeling. I didn't understand what to do next, how to put one foot in front of the other. And it was one of those situations where, yeah, I was ruminating quite a bit on everything that we had gone through, didn't go through, conversations that didn't get to be had. And it was extremely painful, and it still is painful. But I've learned since then that you really have to work through your grief. It's a work in progress. It's not something that you just accept it happens to you. It does. Um, but you have to do the work. And that's essentially what I've been doing ever since.
And it's only been 4 years.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's nothing.
Yeah.
For some people, that's still early grief.
Mhm.
Right? That is just, and all loss is hard. All death is hard. Stephen, my late husband, died from a brain tumor, and we had 22 months together. And we knew when he was dying and transitioning and going through that. That's not easy either. And, like, never a but, and a blindsiding, unexpected death. I don't even, that's different. That's a whole different experience. When you're not expecting, and then she's away, like she's out of the country,
Yeah.
you get this phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking for you. I mean, that's painful.
Yeah. It definitely
Yeah.
was. And, it was very bittersweet too, because here I am holding a baby, and then I'm trying to grapple with the fact that I'm never going to see my mom again. And man, that was like a hamster wheel to be on, because you're just like, I have a baby, my mom is dead. I have a baby, my mom is dead. And it was just my brain going back and forth. And in those early stages, that's really the only thing that you can think about. It's a constant pop up in your brain. And having to do that while trying to take care of a newborn, I was actually just talking with my friends about it today because I took my girls to the pool yesterday, and for whatever reason, pools are triggering to me because it reminds me of summer. And the first summer of my daughter's life, I tried to, do the fun mom stuff, but all I could remember was just sitting there thinking about the fact that my mom was dead. And so the early days of my daughter's life is just a blur. I barely remember it because the grief kind of was all consuming. And so I think now I'm in a stage where I'm kind of grieving the fact that a big part of their infancy and their young years has been tainted by the grief. And so that's hard too, And so that's like a secondary loss, a subsequential loss that we have to process and we have to verbalize and share, because if you keep it inside, we all know what happens when we keep it inside, right? We don't want to do that.
That pressure cooker, that pressure valve. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that is a secondary loss. And when I talk about secondary losses, I always remind people a secondary loss doesn't mean it's less than the primary loss.
Yeah.
It can be just as big as the primary loss, but it's that ripple effect. So when your mother died and you have this new baby and it's COVID,
Yep.
it's still COVID, even though it's 2022, you're people still getting COVID, even though the pandemic was over. Who was there for you? Did you have support in your social circle with your extended family members? Because you said you did the work. So what did that look like? What does the work look like for you?
Well, I feel like I was kind of figuring it out because I was one of the first people in my friend group that had lost a parent. I did have one friend who had lost her dad a couple years prior, and that was a wake-up call to me that I realized that I was not there for her the best way I could have. And so I feel like that was a whole realization of understanding how to talk and cope and be there for other people. But I really did have a strong group of friends that rallied around me. They showed up for her celebration of life. I do remember specifically sitting in my living room when they all came over to meet the baby and just like kind of be there for me, bring me food. And I remember laughing like really hard, like a belly laugh for the first time after my mom had died. And that was the first indication that I knew that I was going to be okay, but it was going to be really hard. And so, obviously my friends, my husband, he had also lost his mom about a year prior to my mom passing. And so I feel like we were both kind of in the same boat, but the way that he deals with grief is so different than the way that I deal with it. So as much as it brought us together, it also kind of reminded me that everyone processes grief in a different way. And then, my family, my dad, my brother, we all banded together to really just be there for each other. And so, yeah, I feel like having those three main pillars were super important. I also found having some type of purpose, going to work, things like that, that also was there for me. It might not be necessarily a person, but it was a place that I could go to and just feel supported in the sense of having structure. Having that structure was very helpful for me.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing all of that. What is your mom's name?
Laura.
We love to say their names. I think it's important. Not everybody asks, but it's important to say their names.
Yes.
Tell us one thing about Laura that you want us to know.
My mom was a bottle of energy, just like shooken up and just ready to pop at any moment. She just had so much life in her. And as much as I feel like she left the earth too early, she lived so many lifetimes in the 57 years that she was here. And so, yeah, I feel like in a strange way, I do embody a lot of the ways that my mom lived. And it's something that I do try to live a little bit more like her, even when it goes against my grain a little bit. But yeah, she was just very outgoing, very bubbly. Some of her friends called her spicy. I don't know. She was a very vibrant personality. And I think that that's ultimately what led me to talk about grief the way that I do. Is it's in her style and her spirit. And so that's kind of how I get to honor her, is to talk about the hard things in a way that I know my mom would approve of.
Oh, you honor her well. You truly do. And I don't think the apple falls far from the tree.
No, it doesn't.
At all. Because I see you and your personality, and you are that bubbly spitfire person.
Yeah.
That sassy person. I love that. Yeah, I love that. So tell me how it all evolved into the legacy letters and no legacy lost.
Yeah. So I was still on maternity leave. And I remember, again, with my baby being home, it was just so easy to think about all day long. And due to the nature of our relationship and the things that were left unsaid, it kind of broke my heart that we didn't get to fully resolve things. Like, yes, we did, but we didn't, it wasn't like fully talked through. And so that's essentially where I started my creativity with grief is I created these guided journals to ensure that nothing gets left unsaid. So people can leave behind messages of love, advice, and support for their loved ones. And it also serves as like in case I'm not here for life's biggest moments. Like there's a page for graduations, weddings, if they're ever having a conflict with a friend or a spouse, like how to deal with it. Like there's just so many different prompts in there where you can leave behind a lasting legacy of your support, regardless of the circumstance. And so that's kind of where I started. And I remember going on Instagram, starting an account to talk about that kind of stuff and talk about what I published and talk about my grief. And it was really difficult at the beginning for anyone to really give me the time of day. I remember pitching myself to different news organizations and talk about it, and no one really wanted to talk about the grief. And the only people that did were other people, other grievers who had also created a product or a service or started podcast and as a result of their grief. And I realized, wow, like there's an ecosystem of grief people online. We need to put them together. And so it was just a slow evolution from creating something of my own, realizing that there was a gap, and trying to course correct and create a bridge for that gap for all of these people that are hungry to tell their story. They're hungry to share what they've created because there's some brilliant things out there. There's brilliant podcasts. There's um, brilliant group leaders, coaches. We have subscription boxes. You name it, it exists in the grief space, and it doesn't always get the highlighting that it deserves. And unless either you're famous or you have a viral video, not everyone is getting that spotlight. And so I really felt like it was needed to have a space, a magazine where we could highlight their stories and tell their stories and include the pictures, because I think the pictures are so important to storytelling. And yeah, that's kind of where it started from, and it became a beast of its own. It's grown into something bigger than that. But yeah, that's kind of just like, I guess, the roots of it all.
Did you have any experience in book writing, in publishing, in magazines, and digital marketing?
No. I come from a background of education. I was a high school Spanish teacher. And so I guess the best marketing experience I could say I've ever had is getting kids excited about mid-century Spanish literature. But like it's not always about the content. It's how we talk about the content. And so I think grief is the same way. People are hesitant to talk about grief. And my approach is if we talk about it in a way that's approachable and relatable and colorful and fresh, people are more willing to engage. And so, yeah, I think channeling all that I learned from education and creating just killer slide decks for my students, I was able to then kind of pivot and apply that to creating, my books or my journals, I should say, and the magazine. So, yeah.
And the questions in the books, did that just come from what you wished you had known from your mother, or was that through talking to other people or research?
It was, yes, definitely rooted from the lack of closure from my mom, but also I also thought and ruminated on the fact that if something were to happen to me tomorrow and my daughter had to grow up without me, what would she need? So that's kind of where the questions came from.
You mentioned the word closure, and I think we know that when somebody dies, there is no closure.
Um,
I have clients will say, or people that come to my support groups about closure, I just want, or people will tell them, you need closure. And I would say, there is no closure. This isn't a bank account, right? It's not a bank account. It's not a business you're closing. It's not the door.
Yeah.
So there is no closure. I said, can we reframe that? Is finding some sense of peace
Yes.
with what's happened. And
Yeah.
that's not always easy to find.
No, it's not. But I do think it's possible. And I think that that's why I'm so I don't know, passionate about talking about it because you don't know what you don't know. And unless you have somebody who is a lighthouse and is able to shine that possibility in your perspective, you're never gonna get to that understanding on your own. You need someone to kind of guide you. And I've had people that have guided me along the way too, and just I don't know, expanding my perspective on what grief means and how we process it and how we deal with it. All of that has been an integral part of what Get Griefy Magazine has evolved into. And so I think that um, is also a huge proponent of this as well, is just that community building piece and learning from other people. While their grief might be different than mine or look different than mine or their loss is different than mine, a loss is a loss, and there's still things to learn from other people, regardless of the type of loss that they've lived through. So I think that again, the idea of we never stop learning can kind of come to play, right? We can still learn from each other.
Yeah, and you created a space for professionals like me to be a part of, Get Griefy Magazine with your small business collective, and there are so many different sections within the Get Griefy Magazine for professionals. And honestly, the reason why I'm doing a YouTube podcast now is because of one of the podcast meetings I attended, which was like back in December.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole podcast group that meets and they talk about their podcasts. And I said, I don't have a YouTube. And they said, well, you need to get a YouTube, Holly. I was like, okay. I was, okay, I will. And thankfully, my producer, Cindy, said, okay, let's work on it and see how we can make that happen.
Yeah.
So it's not just for those who, anybody who's in the grief field is grieving. Everybody's grieving something, whether you're in the grief field or not.
Yeah.
Anybody that is in the grief profession is in it because of their own lived experience.
Yeah.
Right? Don't you find that with everybody you've talked to?
Totally. Yeah. And I don't think anyone's like, oh, when I grow up, like I never thought like when I grow up, I'm going to write a grief magazine. That just sounds absolutely bonkers to me. But yeah, I think all of us, we felt a call because there was something inside of our heart that realized that grief had cracked something open inside of us, and that curiosity, when we lean into it, you realize how much purpose is there and how much you can help other people. And that for me is, there's so much more to grief than just the tears. And for me, that has been one of the most beneficial pieces of grief. I know people that rubs people the wrong way, like, oh, there's good to grief. And I will say, yeah, there can be. And that for me is one of the positives, is just expanding and growing and finding purpose, truly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are gifts and blessings,
Mm-hmm.
for the experience. It's not that, oh, it was a gift that your mother died.
Yeah.
Oh, no, right?
Yeah.
That's even that. No. I had somebody once say that they heard somebody say, there's a gift in this, for what I went through. And then in a group I was in and that I lead, and then my client who comes to the group said, I don't see a gift in this. I said, no, you're not understanding. So I'm going to clarify, because I just love to clarify these things. It's not the gift in the loss. It's the gift in how you choose to live your life and honor that person after that loss occurs.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do? How are you going to live your life? Right? So you live your life honoring your mother. And honestly, even this legacy for your children.
Yeah.
That we can do this. This is hard and this does suck.
Yeah.
And you miss your mother every day. And so if a day goes by, I say, oh, I forgot to think about my mother today. Like, that's never going to happen. Right? This is a lifelong experience we're going to go through. And the thing is, guys who are listening and watching, nobody gets out of here without grieving something. Nobody. This is a human experience. But you can find the gifts if you want to.
Absolutely.
Again, not the gift in the death, or not the gift in the divorce, or not the gift in the job loss, whatever the loss is. But finding something underneath it, if you can sort of unpack it a little bit, which is what you've done. You've unpacked it.
Yeah.
So did Get Griefy Magazine start out just for people who are grieving? And did it sort of all of a sudden start unfolding into also grief professionals and people who are caring for grievers?
Yeah. I think initially I had connected with like a solid core group of people that I really felt called to highlight. So that was the initial response. Like I felt like it was just me highlighting my friends. And then from there, it kind of just grew into something bigger than itself. And, I think too, like I started before I was ready. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't know what I truly wanted it to be. I just knew that I wanted to make it. And so I look back at the first issue and I laugh because I accidentally published it like way too small and the margins are off. And in terms of design, I'm like, ooh, like that looks not the best. But it truly is a work in progress. And as I've gone along, I feel like I have really honed in and focused on what I want the magazine to be. And I do want it to be, yes, for people who are grieving, but also for the people who are supporting the grieving as well. And a space for all of us to come together and share our expertise, share our experiences. And, all of the big names in grief right now are talking about how important it is to write through your grief and also that grief needs to be witnessed. Well, what better way to do that than to create a publication where that can actually happen and it can be witnessed in real time? And so I don't know, I just feel like there's so much healing involved, and as much as books can be beneficial, sometimes our brain just can't handle it, especially in the beginning. And so what I love about magazines is that there's so much nostalgia attached to them. It reminds me of being 17 years old flipping through, the different magazines that I used to get. And it does feel like you kind of can curl up on a couch, hang out with a group of people, even though you're not actually with them. It's like a social aspect. And you can learn. And just because some of the stories aren't 100% um I guess educational focused, you can still learn from people's lived experiences too. And so I think that that's what I enjoy about it. It's a healthy mix of some scientifically backed grief data, if you will, but then there's also things that are it's just human. It's a human experience. And so it's a hodgepodge. It's a hodgepodge grief experience. And yeah, I love the storytelling aspect. I think that is one of those really humanizing components of grief. When we can all sit down and see each other's grief for what it is, we realize that we have a lot more in common than what we think. So,
And it helps people feel less isolated
yes.
in our magazine publication. Is it only digital or do you do hard copies?
I do both. So the hard copies, right now they're just print on demand and people can go on Amazon and purchase a copy if they feel called. And to be honest, again, I feel like sometimes people are craving that analog experience. They want to be able to put their phone down for a little bit and they want to be able to curl up with a blanket. So that's why I do think the print can be great too. So I don't know. But digital's free, so there's that too. I don't wanna have to, hide resources behind a paywall, so I'm just trying to be as accessible as possible with that.
That's beautiful. I just love that for people and for you and what you've done. So yesterday was a big day for Get Griefy Magazine because you had the Get Griefy Magazine Kids Edition, the very first one ever.
Yes.
And as of this morning, it was number 3.
Yep.
And it's probably going to be number 1, I would imagine, next few hours. You're welcome to check while we're talking if you want. I know you just keep scrolling back saying, okay, where are we now? Where are we now? So how has that been received and what brought you to want to do a kids edition?
So this is something that actually happened in real time. I was in New York in January, and one of my best friends in the grief space, Blair Kaplan Venables, she creates books on resilience. And, she invited me to be in one of her books and write a chapter. And there was a book launch in New York. And so we were all at brunch. We were about to go see ourselves on a billboard in Times Square for the book launch. And I was sitting next to Tasha and her husband, Safi Faruqi. And they're of the Faruqi Five. If anyone is listening, I highly recommend you check them out. And essentially, they are a family. They're both medical practitioners, but they have 3 daughters, and their middle daughter is medically complex and currently on hospice. And they were also involved with the Resilient AF book launch, and Soraya, their daughter, wrote a chapter. But as we're sitting at lunch, kind of unpacking our grief and talking about the things that we're living through, um, you know, her dad said something to me that broke my heart, but equally kind of lit something or an idea in my head. And he said that, she recognizes that she's sick. She recognizes that she's going to die younger than what most kids will, She knows she's not going to have a full life. And she told her dad that she just wanted her life to mean something. And again, as a parent, I can't imagine what, like, you're tucking your teenager into bed and that's what they have to say for themselves. And I realize as an educator, so many of the students that I would have struggles with and challenges with, they have also gone through things in life, but they allowed it to affect them in such a way that they were just like willing to throw away the rest of their life. And it felt like such a waste for me that they are giving up on their future based off of something that has happened to them in their past. And I'm listening to this family tell their story, and, this teenager has such profound wisdom and she wants her life to mean something, even though she knows that she's not going to have a full life. And I was like, you know what, this needs to be a kids issue of the magazine. So shortly thereafter, I sent Tasha a voice message and I said, I know Soraya wants her life to mean something. What if we put her on the cover of the magazine and we allow you guys as a family to share your story, your grief story? And your grief story is unique because it's playing out in real time. You know that her time is limited, and it's difficult because you also have 2 other teenage daughters that are processing this and understanding that their sister is not gonna be with them forever. And, this is so layered and complex. It deserves the space for you guys as a family to share. And they have such a beautiful outlook on life. Their family motto is "Suck the joy out of life," because what they're living through is hard. And they they know that joy is still there, but they have to chase it and they have to seek it. And so I don't know, I just felt called to, one, put them on the cover, and then from there, find other, I would say, grief role models for teenagers to look up to. Because again, what I saw in the high school was just typical teenage self-destructive behavior based off of some instances and some hard things in life that people have lived through. And it's not to say that those things aren't hard, but we need to process them and we need to work through them. So that way there is still hope and there is still purpose. And so that's truly the goal of the kids issue. We highlight, their family. We have, I would say, inspiring people who are cool that the kids are going to relate to. But then also I have people that are experts in grief, and they are literally, doctors and grief professionals that have written articles and broken it down so that way it's easy for kids to understand, with matching graphics and things that are actually engaging. So the idea is yes, it's a magazine, but it's also a conversation starter. People who are working with kids in grief groups, they're able to use those articles as, grief group topics and conversations, and really build from it. So I was able to use my experience in education to create something that was more than just a magazine. It really is a grief tool to help teenagers. And, teenagers don't have a ton of support out there. It's either kid stuff or adult stuff. There's none of that in between. So,
And teenagers aren't looking, they're not going to go outside of either their circle or their bodies. A girl, I wish this was around when my kids needed it. So when Stephen was diagnosed, they were in 6th grade and 10th grade. And then when he died, they were 8th grade and senior in high school. Yeah. So Liana was 13 and a half when Stephen died, and Derek was not quite 18 yet. And they both, because of their ages and their genders, they both grieve, and because they're different people, they grieve very differently. And I think about, and we're going to talk about schools and how schools handle grief, and I'll quickly share. Liana's school was fantastic. I mean, the guidance counselor and her teacher seemed to be really present for her. She was also held it very close to the vest and she didn't want to be othered. Kids don't want to be othered. They want to be like everybody else. They don't want to have a dead parent.
yeah.
So she went on back to school very quickly after Stephen died. And Derek, who was a senior in high school, had a much more difficult time. And I can remember him calling me from the bathroom. I don't feel like for telling the story, but they don't listen anyway. And called me and said, I need to come home. And it was early. It was in the morning. He had only probably been at school for an hour, maybe 2 hours. And I immediately went to the school and went into the office. I said, I need to pick up my son. They said, well, where is he? I said, he is in his class, but he called me from the bathroom. And they were so angry that he didn't take through the protocol to come downstairs, to go to the nurse, to speak to somebody, then call your mother, and they'll call your mother for all of these things. I was like, this boy is grieving. His father just died a month ago.
Yeah.
I'm picking my kid up, get him out of the classroom.
Yeah.
And they were not, it was a really bad situation. Like he did not get the support. So that was really hard. And I think about if I could have had a magazine like yours laying around the house.
Yeah.
Because that's the best thing for kids, because I don't want to read a magazine about grieving, but if it's laying around the house, I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
And they'll look at it. So kudos to you. I mean, that's such a beautiful gift to give kids, especially teen kids, like I said, because they're not seeking out support. They're not going to go, they're not going to go to support groups. They're not going to go to a kindergarten. They're not going to go to that. Young kids will, and maybe college age or older. But that in between, that middle school to high school, like I said, they want to be like everybody else. So this is a great opportunity for these kids, however old they are, to just pick it up and nobody has to see them doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and
That's
I think
something.
the other thing too is that like when they pick it up, they realize that they are like other people and there are other people like them that exist. And even though it's fewer and far between and maybe they're not in their school, they're around. And so I think that that also is an eye-opening experience because I can't even think of the number of times where a kid in school, I'd be sitting in the office talking to them about whatever it is that they're going through, and they feel like truly that they're the only one in the building that has that experience. And while it doesn't necessarily lessen the blow to know that there's other people out there, there is something to be said about like misery loves company. It's not that like we want to see other people be miserable, but you just want to know that you are in company, that you're not the only one.
Very lonely. It's very lonely to grieve as an adult, right? When you're a mother, it's very lonely to grieve as an adult. But to imagine what a child, whether they're however old they are, that they don't know how to process these feelings if they've never had this loss before. And they are going to be one of the only. There are other kids, but how do you find them? And you feel so isolated.
Yeah.
So again, it's just a beautiful gift that you're giving the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, you. I bow down to you. I bow down to you.
Honestly, that was probably one of the biggest lifts I've done so far, just because I had so much writing on it. There was just so much in me coming from my education background. It really meant a lot to me. And it also meant a lot for the family that was involved. And so I just like really wanted it to be good. I wanted it to be as perfect as possible. And so finally getting it out into the world, I feel like this sense of, whew, like it's out there, it's done. And yeah, I just want to be able to sit and enjoy and hopefully watch it continue to rise on the charts because it deserves a space where everyone's going to find it and it's accessible to people. So I really hope that it continues to grow. Yeah.
It does. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I can't wait to. And I am going to actually order because I like hard copies of things. Like I read books. I don't read Kindle. I just love to touch the paper.
Yeah.
So I will be ordering that today. So maybe that'll get you to #1. Who knows? See what happens. So that's a great segue in to the school system in grief. Like, I shared my personal experience, and this is a very long time. Stephen's been gone 15 and a half years. Derek is now 33. Leon is 29. So let's talk about that because I know this is a big platform for you right now, is bringing grief literacy, and I would love to join you on that in Maryland, bringing grief literacy into the school system.
Yeah.
And it's not just the kids, it's the teachers, it's the administrators, it's the front desk people, right? Those are the people, the custodians, whomever, anybody, PE, all of them need to understand and how to bear witness and hold that space for these children that are grieving.
Yeah. I saw a trend because again, I was working in the classroom for a while and then I moved into a student services role. And so many of the situations that I saw were the guidance counselor would be notified that something had happened at home and they would play the middleman and let all the teachers know, which I think is important. But from there, it almost felt gatekeepy in the sense that only the social worker or only the guidance counselor were the ones that were kind of allowed to talk about it. And like if they're having trouble in class, just send them to us. And while I do understand that sentiment, if the student is truly in crisis, what would end up happening is that the grief would not really be addressed, or the teachers wouldn't want to talk with the students about it because they didn't want to bring it up, right? Or they didn't want to make the student feel worse, or they didn't want to upset them in class. And they don't really understand that that's just not how grief works. And regardless of whether or not you say something or not, the student is going to be devastated and they are going to be heartbroken. And when we ignore it, all we're saying to them is that I don't feel comfortable talking to you about it, or, you know, i- if I send you away to the social worker, like, this is too much, you're a distraction. Like, we're like sending them all these subliminal messages that we don't want to send kids who are grieving. And, what I've noticed is that we are so quick as educators to say that we are living in a mental health crisis, and there's so many students who need support, and we don't have enough social workers, we don't have enough therapists, et cetera, in the buildings. Yet it gives me pause, and it makes me wonder if maybe instead of a mental health crisis, we just have a lot of students with grief that has not been acknowledged. And when grief goes unacknowledged, especially in teenagers, we know that it turns into something else. It's never just grief. It turns into anger, defiance. It can turn into withdrawal symptoms and not wanting to come to school. It turns into apathy, or it could be the complete opposite. When a student feels this loss of control, then they become hyper controlling and super bossy and, perfectionist, and then they lose it when there's something goes wrong. And so it's like, do we have all of these other issues, or is it just that they're grieving something and we never took the time, we never paused to talk to them about what they're going through? And so I'm like, I don't know. I do think, yes, there is some mental health issues, but grief isn't a mental health issue. Grief is just a human experience that we all go through, and we
And it's mental health, but it's not an issue or something that we need to look as a challenge, right? Anxiety, addiction, all these things can happen with these kids. And it all comes from not having an outlet for their pain.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, I feel like we could be doing so better. And I even know for a fact that prior to my own loss, I had said things to students who had gone through a loss that I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that," right? And I remember, there was a girl after I thought it was enough time. I I kind of put her on blast and I said, "Hey, when are you gonna turn this around? You had an A before, now you have a C. Wouldn't your dad want you to be, being successful?" And I look back, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what a crappy thing to do, to leverage the grief and the guilt to get her to be better at school." Like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that," but you don't know what you don't know, and you also, as teachers, sometimes you feel compelled to fix and to make things, quote, unquote, "better." But with grief, that doesn't necessarily that's not necessarily the case. It's not something you can fix. And so, yeah, I just feel like having the conversations at school, talking to teachers about what grief means, how grief shows up, and how we can best support, that conversation needs to be had, because we go through all of these other trainings and it's always for things that are further down the road and further escalated. Why don't we stop it at the beginning and stop it from, compounding and turning into all of these other issues? It won't turn into that, and it won't get to that if we're just providing them a space to process and feel like they have someone to go to. So, I don't know. That's
Yeah,
my
no, and you're right. I don't know if you saw my recent reel that I posted. I think I posted it last week on Instagram about that you're not broken. Your heart is broken, right? These kids aren't broken. Their hearts are broken. They may feel broken, right? Grief can make you feel broken. I think about what you said to that child, one of your students, which is, and that, like you said, when you don't know, you don't know, right? You're well-intentioned,
right,
just misinformed at that time. And think about how many people said to you, "Oh, Kara, your mother would want you to be happy.
right.
Your mother wants you to enjoy your children.
Yeah.
Your mother wouldn't want you to be sad." I mean, I can remember people saying, "Stephen just wants you to be happy." It's like, how do you know what Stephen wants?
Yeah.
I know what
Well,
Stephen wants.
I think that those things, like, 2 things can be true. Like, yes, it's true that they probably would want that, right? But the reality is that's not the situation that I'm in. I'm not physically capable of doing that right now. And so it's almost like you're forcing someone to put on a smile, or you're forcing someone to perform for your own discomfort, like, because they're uncomfortable with the way that you are either acting or underperforming, et cetera. Like, you're not living up to someone else's expectations, and I feel like that's just so unfair when it comes to grief. You just have to be present in who you are and how you're feeling. And it's okay to fall behind. It's okay to just feel like crap. It's okay to feel sad. We don't want to stay there forever, but and it's a place that we jump in and out of, especially now that I'm further removed from the situation. Like, there are still times where I get really down and out about it, but I have to pull myself out of it so I don't stay there. I don't want that to be my permanent destination.
Those great firsts. Yeah. So did you ever reach out to that student?
You know what? I don't know if I still have any contacts with her, but I have brought up that story multiple times, and I'm just praying that at some point she comes across it and she sees it. Because she's probably around 23 right now.
Okay.
So it's somewhat recent, but yeah, I want to say she was a junior or maybe a sophomore. I don't remember, but
It'd be kind of interesting if you were ever able to get in touch with her and say, hey, you know what? I've learned so much,
yeah,
and have a conversation and see. She may say, I don't know what you're talking about. Because sometimes kids are like, what?
yeah,
Or yeah, that shaped my life. But
I don't know. What's funny is that there is a there was one year where, for whatever reason, all of those kids I'm still like very much connected with, and they're like in their mid-20s now, and they're all young professionals, etc. But the one I just saw had posted something about her dad, and I was like, "What?" Like, I had no idea that any of this was going on when you were in my classroom, and so I reached out to her, and she actually ended up writing an article for the magazine, because I think it's really important for educators to understand that, her situation was that her dad was detained when she was really young, and throughout her whole life, going in and out of housing instability, not knowing where her dad was, etc. And so, you know, I, as her teacher, had no idea all of this was going on. I just saw her as this perfect student that showed up every day, rose her hand, wanted to participate, like, was an exemplary student, but she was carrying all of this weight. And I think that's also important to acknowledge and talk about, that just because a kid appears to be doing fine, that doesn't mean that they're fine. And the only way we're gonna get past that and kind of support these kids that need it is we have to make it acceptable, make it culturally normal to talk about grief. And, yeah, unless we as the adults feel comfortable talking about it, the kids aren't gonna feel comfortable talking about it.
I'm on that bandwagon with you, girl. Yeah. So yeah, that's why we do what we do. That's why I do what I do. We want to normalize this and open it up to everybody and say we can talk about this. This isn't scary.
Yeah.
Everyone's experiencing it. People are comfortable talking about death, but grief not so much.
Yeah.
Right? And non-death losses, like, people don't understand. Like, that student was going through a non-death loss.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
that's a huge grief response. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about resilience just briefly. I know we're getting close to the end of our time together here, but not when we're going to meet for coffee one day. And I know you're a certified resilience expert, and that, I think, it must be through Blair's program, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I know she doesn't have one coming up soon, because I was checking that out. I love getting certifications like that. That is totally my thing. Like, that's my jam. Like, I have a million certifications. I'm constantly learning and growing in the field. So sometimes resilience can be misunderstood, as you know, in the grief arena. So let's talk about what resilience is and what resilience is not.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could talk about this for so long. That is something that we're actually working on together right now, because we submitted a panel for South by Southwest, kind of touching on the idea that resilience isn't dead. And I know that, yes, I don't know why in the grief space we were hesitant to use that word. I think that we're afraid of putting unnecessary pressure on people, and we don't want to minimize what they're going through. Um, and I agree that the term resilience can be problematic if we just use it as a band-aid term. Like, "Oh, they're resilient. They'll get through it." Right? Yeah, that's a problem, because you're completely bypassing what the person is going through, and you're not actually sitting with them and seeing how much that they're carrying. However, I think if that term is picked up from the individual going through whatever it is that they're going through, and they use that as a beacon, that resilience can be incredibly powerful. And it does give you some autonomy and control over the situation, in the sense that you're reminded that you are, in fact, in the driver's seat. And the things that you do next ultimately will become your new reality. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Resilience in this space, it's a tricky topic because there's some people that are just, they're like, no, I don't know if I want to go there because I don't want to make people feel some type of way. But I do believe that the more we talk about it, it's an expansive experience in the sense that, again, you don't know what you don't know. And the more we shine light on different perspectives, on new ideas and new things, that's when you start to realize, like, okay, this this can be something that I can im imply or and weave into my life, right? So yeah, it's so tricky. It's very nuanced. It's not as simple as, like, resilience is good or bad, but I'm definitely in the camp that I lean into the resilience. I think it's important, and, yeah, it gives me some of that, um, agency back, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's empowering. So would you say, I mean, I would say this. So would you agree? Like I said, healing is ongoing,
Yeah.
that resilience is ongoing. I think people think, well, if they're resilient, so they're fine. They're so resilient. They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and now they're fine.
Mhm.
Right? This isn't ongoing. It's an ebb and flow. Like grief is an ebb and flow, and those grief bursts and tsunamis.
Yeah.
And then you have these level off times. So would you say resilience is like that?
Yeah, and I would also say that just because someone is embodying what it means to be resilient, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have hard times or hard moments. But it's having that self-awareness of knowing that, yes, this is a really hard time. I'm struggling right now, but also trusting and knowing it within yourself that you can get out of it at some point and it's not a permanent destination. And so I think it's just also having that expanded macro world view of what's to come. And even though right now you're so micro and you feel like, oh, this is really hard and difficult and this is all I can see right now. It's this knowing that eventually things will dissipate. And yes, that will always be a part of you and something that you've gone through, but it's no longer going to be the only thing that you can focus on.
It won't dictate your whole life.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I wanted to, because I know that's a really important topic. And it is for me too, like to explain to people what resilience means.
Yeah.
Like I have a client and I say, and I say, you know what? I say, you've got grit. Like you've got grit. Like you're feeling the grief and you want to feel the joy. You want to have both. And that's resilience, being able to sit in the space of both.
Yeah, and people are fighting for it, and that's okay too. It's okay to say that you're fighting for joy, right? And it's not easy. It's really not. But the more you surround yourself with like-minded people, and surrounding yourself doesn't necessarily mean like becoming friends with people, but surrounding yourself in terms of podcasts and resources and thought leaders, people that are sharing that mindset, you're more likely to absorb that as well. So I think that that's also important, and that's why like podcasts like this are so important for people because
And feeling joy, feeling resilient, feeling joy is not dishonoring your person. It's the exact opposite. It's and that's where people get tripped up. Well, if I'm happy and I'm laughing, and I think I just put some about that with guilt too, you know, if I'm happy, then and my person isn't alive anymore. They can't be happy anymore. They can't laugh anymore. Their resilience is gone. How can I do that? Because that's how you honor them, because you're here. You're here. You're still here. So how do you want to live your life?
yeah.
And what a more beautiful way of saying I love this person, because I'm gonna, and that's how that's sort of my mantra. I live my life purposely, passionately, lovingly, hopefully, and joyfully, because that's how I honor Stephen. That's how I think I am here. I'll talk about him every day, and I'm gonna live my life and love every minute of it.
And you know what? I this is my personal belief, but I feel like a lot of the things that I've done and built, it's been co-created. I feel like my mom has been with me every step of the way, and I don't know how to describe it other than it's just a feeling that I have, that I just feel like a lot of these, like, ideas that I have, and when I'm in the shower thinking about it, like, an idea will come to me, and I can't help but think like, "Oh, maybe my mom gave me that idea." I don't know. It could be wishful thinking, but it gives me a sense of connection with her still, and it feels like something that we're still continuing to do together. So
I'm a believer in that. I mean, I can't. I don't do this without Stephen, because I wouldn't be doing this had we not had the experience we had. I mean, I would not be having a podcast. I would not be providing grief support for brain tumor losses and brain tumor caregivers and grief support groups and public speaking, going to 1 million brain tumor conferences a year and other conferences as well. This wouldn't be if Stephen wasn't who Stephen is, right? Not who he was then, but who he is, because he's always going to be who he is. That past tense. So yeah. So last and final, what do you wish people knew about grief, or that they understood about grief?
I would say that it's more than just the sad piece. I think people, even to this day, when I explain what I do, I'm met with an awkward silence, or like people don't know what to do or to say and react when I talk about the things that I do. And so, yeah, it's so much more than just what people assume it means. It's more than the tears. I think of my journey, and it also has equated to new perspectives and learning a new skill set and pivoting in my life and meeting new people. And I it's weird to say that I have a community of people that I've met through the internet because of grief that are some of my best friends now, which is just crazy. So I don't know. I think that is the number one misconception, is that grief equals sad. And yes, it does. And it means 50 other things too. And so for me, that's what I'm trying to embody, and also destigmatize that grief is so much more than just the sad piece, for sure.
Kera Sanchez, thank you for joining me today. Tell the audience, my listeners and viewers, how can they find you? Give them all your handles, everything, so that they can find you, because you are worth finding.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we are on Instagram at Get Griefy Magazine. Our website is getgriefy.com, and that's where you can find both the digital and print issues, as well as information about our small business collective. We honestly have so many resources. We have a marketplace, like the whole shebang. So that's all there. And then for my grief advocacy and education, that's at griefu for edu.com. And the Instagram handle is also the same for that. So yeah.
Well, thank you, my friend, for joining. This was a phenomenal time together. You're just incredible. And I feel so blessed that I got to find you, as I find people like you on Instagram all the time. I slide into DM, say, hey, want to be on my podcast? And that's, and that's how I get to know people. And it's really wonderful. So I appreciate you hopping on. I know you have a very busy day today. Right? We were just on the TV show.
Yeah, it's been bonkers, but I'm really excited. We have family coming into town, and again, we just moved to the area, so it's kind of fun to feel like a tourist in your own city now.
Oh, I love your area. I love where you are.
Yeah.
You're in a great city. You're in a great city. So we'll have to get you here and to Bethesda, and we can hang out a little bit.
Yes. We will definitely chat in person and figure out ways we can collab, because this has been fun.
Yeah, I would love that. This is fun for me, really fun for me. So I'm going to give you a virtual hug, because I'm a virtual hugger.
Right back at you.
And thank you. And everybody, thank you for watching and listening at Creating Space for Grief and Hope. Be sure to review, subscribe, and share. And next month, I have 2 guests coming on from Ember AI, which is a glioblastoma AI page. And there's a lot of stuff they're doing on there, Angeline and Jason, and very excited to have them both on in September. So thank you all. And thank you, as always, to my producer, Sandika Polaro, who works very hard to make this all happen and reminds me when I'm talking too loud, I'm talking too soft, I'm talking too fast, what time we're at. And we are at time. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and look forward to seeing you next month.